Hello, everybody. Welcome to Symmetry Live. We are super excited to be back. It's been, I think, a few weeks, if not months, and this. And I think that it's, a lot of things have been going on, both just personally and also just as a team. So we're happy to be back. And feel free at any time to ask us questions on the thread. I'm going to try to keep up with those. Or make comments, and feel free also to share this with anybody you think might be useful. Today's topic is going to be kind of just a little bit about how we've been dealing as a team with some of the issues that have been happening with me personally with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And just to give you kind of an idea, usually at Symmetry Live, we take a question or a topic, and as a panel, we try to give some, quick solutions or strategies or resources for help in any of those areas. So you can also always either PM me or PM Symmetry's page, or even just on the comments and threads, let us know what kind of topics you'd want us to talk about in the future. But today we're going to talk about what is it like when the founder of your organization is going through some personal public things that may affect everybody else. I know that last week we spent most of our provider meeting just talking through our feelings, and everybody had a chance to share. So we thought we would role model a little bit of that discussion with you, the public. So anybody want to start from there?
Well, I can say both Jenny and I don't live local to you, Natasha, or actually in Kansas, because they didn't, do it locally, which my emotions are coming up about that. So both of us, I think, had a hard time not being able to be physically present to support you. I really, really, it was hard to be so far away and to feel so helpless. Not necessarily that I could have been super helpful if I had been there. But it was hard to have to try to be supportive from far away, and feeling, that helplessness was frustrating, on top of the other range of emotions that I was going through. So that was hard for me for sure.
Well, I appreciate that, Lindsay. And I think a lot of people felt that way, and I think people feel that way in general. I think about just even COVID in general. Like, so many of us have been going through personal struggles, but we're not able to do what we normally do in our social networking together, right? Like, well, come over for lunch, or let's go grab a movie, or let's just get together and talk and hug it out, and things that we normally maybe would find helpful, at least for some people. So I do think that distancing was good, a problem. You said something that I just want to pick on just a little bit, not pick on, but just have you talk a little bit more about. You said, I'm noticing my own emotions even as I'm talking about that. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, how do you, that's really awesome that you can be aware of that. Like, where are you noticing that?
I think it's because, and I've been dissecting myself a lot lately and trying to figure out why I get so uncomfortable, but I've been full of anger, honestly, like almost to the point of being like full of rage. And that is not how I normally am. Like I really, and I realize that's kind of part of my Mormon upbringing. Like, we're not allowed to feel angry. Contention is of the devil, don't go there. And so, God, I've been furious. I've been so angry at the injustice. So that's what I feel coming up. Like, even the thought that you had to go to Kansas and I start to go there again, I'm just like, that makes me so mad. So that has been my main emotion, honestly, is just fury. And I don't like that. I mean, I know I need to work on that in myself, but I need to push through this and recognize it and get over it, because I don't like feeling so angry. And I'm still, how many weeks out has it been now? And it's still I just am furious.
Well, and one more thing before I turn to Jenny, like I always feel like our relationship with anger is an important one to think through. And like you said, we've usually, not just in Mormonism, but I think in American culture, where we think of anger as being unhinged or being difficult or problematic. And sometimes we do act problematically when we are angry. But I also think it's really useful to think of anger as a useful emotion. So can you tell me like maybe one or two things that you feel your anger is informing you about that's actually useful for you to have that feeling?
In regards to this situation in particular, um,
Because I'm guessing it also interweaves with your own story. I mean, that's, it's sometimes we're angry for in behalf of our friends, but it also kind of maybe plays back on some of the things that we were harmed by, or I don't know.
yeah, I think, well, I'm trying to, that's something that's interesting. I'll have to think about that for sure, about how it's useful. I think in terms of my own story, I mean, I feel like obviously never anything to the extent that happened to you has happened to me necessarily, but I remember many times feeling like my voice was not being heard. And at the time, I don't know that I thought it was because I was female, but looking back, I think for sure in the church that happened a lot. Like I was just, I was treated kind of like a second class citizen. So I think that is where that part of where that anger is coming from, and just my feelings that I'm kind of I'm frustrated that the church doesn't hold itself to the standard that it claims that it has. Like if we've got this whole list of rules and ways that things should be done, and I was always such a rule follower, and I like knew the rules when I was in the church and I followed them, and so for them to not follow their own rules, the injustice of that is just makes me so angry. And so yeah, I do need to think about how that could be useful to me, or what that's telling me. I haven't really thought about that, but I should.
I love that. And I think you came up with two really good things. One is your own voice being silenced. That's a good reason to be angry. And also like hypocrisy or double standards and how we're all supposed to function. So I do think anger is good in letting us know something's awry. There's something I should be paying attention to. And it's also motivating. It motivates you to stand up for yourself or to have a conversation or to say, this isn't going to work for me anymore. So I think anger can be a really useful tool.
Yeah, and I will say, like, I tend to be kind of timid, and I don't like to stir the water at all. Like I just want to, do my own thing. Um, but when I get angry enough, like I've been this time, I think I've been much more vocal, and I think that's good. I think, I'm willing to be vocal and put myself on the line a little bit when I feel like there's just grave injustice occurring.
It's like anger gives you that extra energy to go and do something about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jenny, what have you been noticing either personally or the team or?
Yeah, it's like when something is happening to someone that you care about and you can't be there. Also, I think you kind of personify it a little bit. Like it feels like it's happening to you personally. Like how would I be reacting to this? And it feels personal. It feels that sense of like I'm imagining you were feeling helpless, like empowered yet helpless, and you had lots of support and yet you were alone. Like all of that tension, I felt like I was also experiencing too. Like I was being a lot more vocal on my own personal page about how I felt about the whole thing, and I found it was just very hard to explain the process to other people who did it. It was for maybe believing members. They were kind of like, well, why are you making this personal thing such a public thing? It's like, well, I mean, okay, let's unpack all of that. Like, let's unpack about what it means for one woman to go and like try to defend herself with a room full of men, and why is she even defending herself? And let's also unpack what this means for us as in our mental health profession. There are a lot of things to unpack there. Um, let's see other, and I found it was it was hard to come up with an analogy even for people who are not Mormon to even explain what was going on. They're kind of like, what is happening, and why is there so much energy around this whole thing? And the only thing I could come up with is like, let's say you went to a foreign country and you unknowingly like committed some sort of treason or some sort of broke a law, and you got sent to the court, and you weren't even allowed to defend yourself about the thing. Like, that kind of helpless feeling is what I was feeling. It's like, oh, there's like a systemic injustice here that's happening that I've noticed for myself. I have been disagreeing with since I was small and I first learned about this. And so when I see this happening in real life, it's like, oh, these are all of the feelings I've been feeling for so long about how I felt about the whole idea of even a disciplinary council, membership council. It just never has sat well with me.
Yeah, I love so much of what you said. And I think one of the things that you said early on was that it's hard not to project your own experience, right, into it. And so it's been interesting as I've been reading some of the comments. Granted, I've probably read like 5% of the comments that have been coming in, which I just feel awful about. I'm usually really good about keeping up with all comments and trying to acknowledge them. But you really can tell by people's questions kind of where they are at, with Mormonism. So you have like a believer who's like, well, why would you make this public? And, why are you even surprised, if you want to be part of the group, you have to kind of keep the rules of the group, or things like that. And then you have like maybe some post-Mormon people who are like, why do you even want to be part of this group to begin with? Like, it's a horrible group and I'm out and you should be out. And so it's very interesting to see like people's comments, of course, are going to be informed by their own experience with Mormonism, right? And their own way of seeing the lens. And a lot of the questions have been really good, but it would take me like, at least 3 pages to write back an adequate response to some of the comments, right? And because what was interesting for me about this whole experience is that it hit both sides of me. Like, it hit my personal side, but it also hit my professional side, right? And I have, kind of my own personal way of looking at Mormonism and my own personal lived experience with Mormonism, and even my family's, because in Mormonism, you're a family, right? I mean, a lot of these ordinances, for example, that now have been deemed kind of null and void affect my family too, right? It's not just me. And then on the other side, there's like this whole professional aspect that I think many of us can relate to and I think why there was such a response to the professional letter. And we have like over 800 signatures now on the professional letter, which is amazing to me. And even that spans the spectrum of LDS people versus, non-LDS therapists, but who work with Mormon people quite a bit. Is that when regardless of how you feel about it personally, when you are committed to helping a community and when your whole professional kind of life has been in that community and helping people figure out things like mixed faith marriage or their sexuality or their sexual orientation or, all kinds of things, parenting, all the things that we do, to then be discredited by that community, right, is something that I'm not sure, like that was part of it for me too. I know I do good work in my community. I've spent a lot of time, energy, and money making sure I do good work in my community. And so then to have it be discredited by a body of people that really don't have a right to talk about it from a professional standpoint, that interplay was very interesting to see how I was reacting to that, how other professionals were reacting to that. And then, of course, it interwove with my personal, space, which, of course, my personal space has been more like I have had valuable experiences in my kind of my Mormon upbringing. I've had very harmful experiences in my Mormon upbringing. And this is where I don't know how to totally separate my profession from myself, because I see it kind of like a dysfunctional family. My family has had awesome moments. My family has been quite dysfunctional. I haven't necessarily taken an either or approach to my family. And that's been how I have dealt with my religious community and what I feel like, is my spirituality as well. I get it that not everybody chooses that. Some people are like, I got to get the heck out of town, right? I can't be associated with this organization anymore, or this church. And then of course there's people who are like, I'm all in, like I'm never leaving, like this is my space where I find so much value and worth. So yeah, I am one of those people that have been kind of more in the middle. And so I think it's hard for the believers to understand that. And it's hard sometimes for the posts people to understand that space, because it doesn't really resonate with their own lived experience. I don't know. Am I answering any of that?
That's a really helpful framework to kind of understand. I mean, like Lindsay, you're saying, you got to be aware of your own personal stuff. So your own personal stuff doesn't mean my experience is not necessarily what Natasha is going through, but I think it is a useful way for you to get more clarity on how you feel about things, what you find to be what works for you and what doesn't work for you.
Yeah. And I know you have to go quickly, Jenny, but one thing that, and you can drop off at any point, okay. Lindsay, I can finish the conversation, but one thing that you asked me about kind of indirectly now and directly before is, why did I take such a transparent approach? And that was, I had to think about that long and hard. Would I make this more private or would I make this more public? So several things came into that for me. One is that I've been public about pretty much every other aspect of my life. So how would I not be public about this? So one, it's just kind of my style. But secondly, as we all know, working with systems, is that we know that systems do best when there is transparency. We know that systems do best when there aren't secrets, especially power differential or abusive secrets. We know that systems do best when they can differentiate, meaning that they have a tolerance for difference within their group or system, right? So this is true of families, this is true of organizations, this is true of job spaces. It's true of countries, like just how much diversity and tolerance can this group be able to tolerate without starting to kick people out of its group, right? Or saying you're not welcome. And even in Mormonism, one of the things I love to talk about as I present is not all Mormons come from the same family system, right? So lots of ways Mormon families Mormon, right? In that sense. And some Mormon families are like, yeah, we have a gay son and we have a daughter who left the church and we have the family reunion and everybody's fine and it's really no big deal. Like they all have their own agency and we tolerate that pretty well. And then of course there's the Mormon families that are, at extreme cases, kicking out their youth person who just disclosed that they're, gay or lesbian, right? And a lot of our homeless youth here in Utah are kids who come from member families that have been kicked out because of their sexual orientation or sexual behavior, even like, oh, you got pregnant at 16, well, you can't live in this house anymore, right? So things like that. So we have to also understand that there's a wide diversity in the spectrum of the Mormon experience, right? And not everybody, and there's some families within Mormonism that do differentiation better than other families. And so I was trying to model that, like if we're going to do this, and, and the church should say this is a confidential process, just like I say therapy is a confidential process. But if my client wants to go and say, hey, this is what happened in my therapy session today to their family or write something on Facebook, that's absolutely their right, because I am the person in power. And we're not protecting my confidentiality, we're protecting my clients' confidentiality, their vulnerability. So I appreciate the church's respect and, saying this is a confidential matter, but that's for my protection. That shouldn't be for their protection. They do these kinds of, things all the time. These disciplinary councils happen all the time for a lot of different reasons. So that should be more up to the person who's involved in that. Do I want this to be confidential or not? I did not need it to be confidential because I'm kind of an open book anyway. And I was hoping that we as a community could learn from it, that we as a community could find out some of our boundaries and what are our limits and where are we at in differentiation skills. And especially with something as important as mental and sexual health, what are the limits and boundaries? We've been dancing around these limits and boundaries for a long time, right? On the one hand, we have some really harsh rhetoric. On the other hand, you have, Elder Christofferson saying, you can support gay marriage and be a member of the church, right? So even within our own, just in the last 5 years, you have all kinds of statements from all kinds of different people, especially in the leadership coming down, that it can be confusing. It can be confusing to be like, well, because I think as Mormons in general, we like to be rule followers. Well, I don't know that we like it, but we are rule followers. It's kind of like a big part of our culture is conformity. And so we're uncomfortable when the rules aren't clear. And why I try to be very kind of rule centric through this process. Like, so what are the rules and how can I show up and what are the processes? And if this is an issue, is there a way to resolve that issue or not? Like my conflict of interest issue. And I think that we are now sitting at the other side of this, sitting with some valid questions and confusion. Because we do have the rules in place, but they weren't necessarily followed the way that they said that they would be followed. And what's that about? And where are the power differentials and who really has power and who doesn't? Those are really good questions for us all to be sitting with. But any last comments before you have to hit off, Jenny?
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you notice that you're uncomfortable with the process that you're engaging in, there's something to be learned there, right? Mm-hmm. So what is it about that process that's making you uncomfortable? What's that say about you? What's that say about the system? And what do you want to do about that, right? Do you feel like you have power? What's it like to not have power?
Right.
Is that a new experience for you to not have, feel very empowered in your life? Mm-hmm. Is that why you're feeling discomfort? Discomfort can be a very good teaching tool for us to, kind of sit with and go, what's happening for me here?
Yeah.
I do have to go, but I'm happy to have joined you in this conversation.
Jenny, we will see you next week.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
So anything that comes up for you, Lindsay, as far as kind of this whole, why I went about it certain ways or.
Well, I love the way you went about it. I think you're super brave. But I think it's helpful for people to see vulnerability and to see what people are going through, because I think that speaks a lot louder than, I don't know how it would have been handled if you hadn't said anything. I don't know, eventually I'm sure the news would have leaked or something, but for you to just be open and honest and raw with your feelings, I think that's, well, it shows people that you're a human being. I think a lot of times, you're kind of a public figure for sure within the Mormon world. And we tend to think of celebrities as, it's hard to think of them as humans sometimes. Like we think, oh, well, especially like a therapist. Well, I'm sure she's like, got all of her stuff together and never has any problems. And that's, not just you, that's just not accurate. We're all human. And so for people to have the chance to see that this was hurtful to you, I mean, it was like a personal attack for one thing. And it was, crossing all kinds of boundaries ethically. It's interesting that I'm currently taking my ethics class in my master's degree for counseling. And I'm like, oh, of all classes to be taking while you're going through this, I was just I just couldn't even get over it. I'm like, are you kidding me? Ethically, it was so wrong what they were doing. So I think it's awesome that you were transparent. And I like what Jenny was saying about being uncomfortable, and that could be a teacher. I think from a Mormon upbringing, we're kind of taught that if you're uncomfortable, then the spirit has left, or that's some sort of message that there's something wrong, which I think that can be a message that something's wrong, but not that something's bad, but that maybe what was wrong was the way they were treating you, not that you had done anything wrong. Like, I think we need to really look inside ourselves and examine what does that discomfort tell us, because it's not necessarily an absence of the spirit, for sure.
Yeah, no, I really love that because I do think discomfort is a super big tool to use. And I think that we do have some simplistic ways to deal with discomfort in organized religion or in organizations in general. It's like it's either or, it's either this or it's either that. And usually most things are a little bit more complex than that. Most things have a nuanced like even this whole thing, it's not necessarily that I acted well and the church didn't. It's like we were interplaying together in ways that were complex, like when they called me out for my language. Well, yeah, okay, maybe my language hasn't always been great. Like I can own that, I haven't always presented myself in the most professional ways or things. And, there's things that elicit that kind of language from me. Some of these issues that I care very deeply about, right? And so that's kind of like a more complex way to think about it versus the church is good or bad or Natasha's good or bad. And why I think too that this is, even though it has been very personally difficult, and it's interesting, I'm noticing myself like, this is the first time I'm talking about this without crying. And maybe even as I say that, I'm going to start crying. So anyway, never mind on that one. Now I'm crying, but it's I think that this is really a conversation that affects us all so much more than me or the church. Like I really hope people are using this opportunity to sit with themselves, to sit with their partners or their families, to sit with their church leaders, and to have more complex conversations, about a variety of things, anything from sexuality or how my kid is being treated in the ward to, um, how are we going to interact respectfully as leaders and pew sitting people, right? In ways that people don't have to feel powerless or that all the power resides in spaces that they don't have a lot of control over, which I think, was harmful. A lot of people have asked me about that. Like, why would you step into a space that was kind of unhealthy? And I do want to address that a little bit. Like, I think that I have a lot of privilege in this experience that I do think is important for me to own. I knew that even though it was personally hurtful, regardless of the outcome, I was going to be okay. I was going to be okay professionally, and I was going to be okay personally. That's because I've been doing my own personal work through Mormonism for the last 15 to 20 years myself. So for me, it was not going into a space where they were going to have a lot of power over how I framed myself professionally or even spiritually, even though they did have the power to pluck my name out of the membership record, right? Like I saw that as really their only power. Mm-hmm. So not everybody's in that space when they walk into disciplinary council meetings, right? And even my ability to be public comes with a lot of privilege because I'm used to being public. So I wasn't taking high risks necessarily in my ability to do that. And that's not the case for everybody. And again, I think as people were talking about, why would you put yourself in that position? Maybe they're coming from a space where that space would not be healthy for me. And I'm like, I totally agree. I don't know that everybody should put themselves in that space. I don't want to, when I say role modeling, say everybody should have done it the way I do it. Because, the first thing that you need to really do when you're interacting with systems, whether it's your family or your job or your church, is self-protection at some level, right? And so sometimes you just have to resign or quit or say, I can't have a relationship with you, Mom, for the next year because I need to take a break from some of the patterns that we have going on that are abusive, in our thing. So I think that there's a lot of wonderful, like even as I'm getting challenged and the questions that are coming into me, I just want to honor those, especially if you disagree or don't get it. Like, yeah, that's fine. That's totally fine because I'm probably in a different space than if this was happening to you, right? Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Well, it totally does. And I was thinking, I mean, in that way, you got to be a voice for people that maybe won't ever have the platform to speak out against what a lot of people, you know, would call spiritual abuse or spiritual violence of excommunication. I know they've changed the name for that now. When you were, I think it was,
I stop you right there because I do just want to call out. I mean, I'm not going to be okay changing words so that we can get away from the accountability of bad behavior. So yeah, it's removing the membership. Well, that still is an excommunication. And most people that I have talked to, both now living through it personally, and even people who were willing to go through it as a repentance process, that's not been something that I've seen as useful. And it's usually, and to call it a court of love or to see it as a way to hold people accountable, which accountability can be important in healing. Um, you know, repentance in the sense of like having grief or sadness for something that you've done wrong can be very important in healing, but you do not need to ostracize somebody from a community in order to create the type of accountability that can be healthy. And that's where we have, I think, taken a very extreme way of managing membership, you know, in our particular culture. But I'm sorry to interrupt. I just
no, you're fine. And I agree with you. On the actual day of your court of love, disciplinary council, I can't ever remember what they call it. I came across this, someone posted this on Facebook and I almost sent it to you, but I was like, I don't know. I knew you were, you know, probably preoccupied, but it's a verse from Esther 4:14. And I don't think it's the King James version, but it says, perhaps this is the moment for which I have been created. And I kind of thought, I was thinking about you a lot because I think, like of your, I know you say it wasn't high risk, but still it was super brave what you did to go in there and to speak so publicly and to stand for truth despite, you know, what you were up against. And I do think that you were able to be a voice for people that don't have that opportunity. So anyway, I thought that was,
thank you. And it's a good reminder of yours for me to yes and because even though I want to downplay the risk, it was not riskless. I guess I'm just thinking to myself, like 15 years ago, I would have never been able to be public about something like this just because I was too vulnerable, you know, in just my own journey. But yeah, that doesn't mean that this didn't come at a huge cost for me too. So I appreciate that. And, you know, and I did want to be able, in a sense, to witness something and make public something that people they just can't, you know, for a lot of personal reasons. Like a lot of times disciplinary councils are not really about your professionalism. It's about your own personal worthiness, you know, and maybe you've done something that is considered, you know, sinful or difficult. From things as difficult as child abuse or infidelity, but then things that are not really sinful in my book, like getting married to your lesbian wife, right? Or things like that. And so I think that in those situations, people don't want that to be a public event. That's extremely personal and hurtful. And so I did want to be able to model, like, this is what we do. And we have to sit with the fact that this is what happens. I didn't expect it to go quite as badly as it did. So that was shocking even to me. I had no idea I would not be able to actually sit down with the people that were having a problem with me and have a conversation. And I had no idea that I would feel so dismissed. I mean, I've spent 20 plus years feeling dismissed, both as a female, like you brought up, but also as a clinician, because, you know, anytime I would try to talk to bishops or stake presidents or even you know, I have been invited to some bigger kind of panel type discussions, even at the church headquarters office in the past. It's very easy that as soon as I'm saying something uncomfortable to dismiss me. And even though it's backed by science or it's, you know, best practice. So that's something that we have to reckon with now as a community. And some people will be able to reckon it by just maligning me and saying, well, Natasha's evil and sinful and deceitful, and all she wants to do is, I don't know, promote porn or something. I don't know what people are saying. Or it could be very easy to malign the church. Well, of course, they're an evil organization, and all they do is abuse, and everybody who's in it is just complicit. And but I think the more valuable conversations are somewhere in the middle of all that, where we can sit with, where are my failings and where are my strengths, and where's the church's failings and where are their strengths, and that it really represents so much more people than me or this entity, this weird entity that we call the church, which is really just an organization full of people. I don't know. It's complex, but I thank you, Lindsay, for having this conversation. Do you have any final thoughts or?
Well, and I'm sure you've received tons and tons of support, but I just wanted to say, like, I've had multiple clients of mine reach out and say, please tell Natasha how much we love her. And they've shared their letters to the stake president that they sent on your behalf with me. And I've just been so touched and just wanted to make sure, I mean, I'm sure you know, but just make sure you know how loved and supported you are from all sides, from all spectrums of Mormonism. I've heard it from everybody. So
Thank you.
that's been awesome to witness, that everyone thinks you're as amazing as I do.
Oh, thank you. I think you're amazing too, Lindsay. Talk a little bit about, first of all, how you're super amazing and some of the things that we're doing as, for me, whenever something difficult happens in my life, I get very motivated. Okay, so what can we do about this, and how can we change, and how can we help? And it's probably why I'm a mental health professional, because that's just kind of my go-to. But even before this all happened, we at Symmetry were having a lot of conversations about how we can up our game in regards to offering resources. And you really stepped into that space, Lindsay. So can you talk a little bit about the group that you are just starting? Like you're in week 2, right? Of this.
Yeah, so it was funny because we had planned the group before any of the stuff with you happened. And then when it all went down, I was like, I'm not sure, we haven't really marketed it much at all because obviously we were busy with other stuff. But then I was like, well, let's just go ahead and market it. So it was like the day of, pretty much, we just put out a call saying we're having the Zoom call for faith transitions. And I was blown away that 65 plus people, because a lot of them were couples. So I wasn't even counting, how many couples were on there. Tons and tons of people were on there. And it was so powerful. So many people joined that had just left the church. I mean, within like 2 days to 2 weeks, or, young kids joining, not young, but like 18-year-olds that still live with their parents. And I don't know how to, don't have anyone. They don't have anyone to talk to. And it's just been a great experience. So we're in week 2. We have a Facebook group that people can join that's secret or private. Like you can find it, but no one can see you, I guess. It's like, I don't know what settings it's at, but it's all very safe. I want it to be a very safe place for people to be able to open up without feeling scared. I remember feeling very, very scared when I first left the church that someone would find out, which is an interesting feeling.
Right.
About leaving the church, but I totally understand that. So it's very safe. And it's really important to me to keep it emotionally safe. So, we've set some pretty firm boundaries. It's going to be respectful. It's not toxic. It's not an angry ex-Mormon group, which sometimes those can form pretty easily. So it's not like that at all. It's just a really safe place for people to kind of work through their feelings. There's a lot of people actually in there that haven't even decided yet what they want to do. They're just really on the fence and trying to decide where to go. So yeah, it's just been fantastic. It's every Tuesday at 7:00 Mountain Time on Zoom. And I always post the link everywhere I can just to try to make it accessible.
If you're interested, make sure you follow our Symmetry Solutions page. You can also, we're going to have we have an events page on our website, which you can reach by going to getmormonhelp.com. And we've decided that we're going to have a lot more of these because we see the need, right? So, and this particular group also is sponsored by Thrive as well, which is another nonprofit organization that is very interested in thriving regardless of where you're at, kind of in your Mormon journey. And especially for those who have left the church and are struggling with community resources and, you know, emotional resources and things like that. So, so if you know of a time that works for you better than 7 o'clock, you know, Tuesday nights, Mountain Standard Time, please let us know in the chat. We are going by, we're taking a donation approach because we don't want anybody to not be able to participate due to cost issues. At the same time, we need to be able to make these sustainable. So donations where you can are really important. The suggested donation is $30, you know, a week if you're going to attend. So, but if you can only, you know, donate $2, that's fine. If you can donate 150, because it's not a big deal, and you can kind of, in a sense, sponsor other people who are attending who can't, that would be great. And if you can't donate financially, you can always help us, like, you know, as far as marketing. So share the group or talk about the group with other people. Let people know what's helpful about it. Let us know what's helpful or not helpful about it. How is it meeting your needs? How is it not? I know with 60 plus people, which we didn't expect, that's a lot. So we're considering, you know, like having maybe more than one provider, even having like breakout groups. You know, there's a lot of things that we can do to make these groups really meet the needs that you're wanting. And we also talked today at our provider meeting about really upping the groups in general. So we talked about, for example, a sexual abuse male group that's very hard to come by. And so if you're a male body who has been through some type of sexual assault or abuse issue, that can be hard to find safe groups. Of course, a sexual abuse female group as well, maybe more of a clinical religious trauma group, you know, like that kind of goes a little bit more than just support, but maybe, you know, like a 6-week type of space. We're talking about LGBTQ plus youth groups, which are a little trickier because, you know, they're minors, and we want to make sure that enough kind of safeguards are in place in order to make those groups safe and yeah, clinically effective for people. So give us your ideas, you know, female sexuality groups, mixed faith support, which I do a lot of that through Marriage on a Tightrope, but this doesn't mean that you can have more, you know, more than that. Anyway, we are all open for ideas. And then the other way too that you can help us is that, well, 2 things I want to let people know other than the groups that we're starting is, one, I am working on creating a website where we're going to be sharing a lot of the letters that came in and kind of, you know, be able to keep the transparency open about this particular event, not because, again, of me, but just to kind of have like a space where that can all be found easily instead of trying to thumb through all my Facebook posts, which just get lost over time. And so that's coming up, and it's going to be called Mormon Sexual Shame Stories.org. I think I'll share some of these things, but it's not live yet. So I'm trying to be very mindful about how I launch that website. So that's going to be in about 2 weeks. We are also in the process of trying to create a nonprofit leg to our group so that people can make donations, and that way we can support people who maybe can't afford coaching or therapy services. Maybe if nobody donated to a group one night, I can still pay Lindsay for her time, you know, because her time is super valuable. Things like that, you know, so and then you can get like a tax you know, credit for that instead of just donating. Plus, you know, it's anytime you have a nonprofit, there's more transparency. It requires me to kind of be able to report how those monies are being used, et cetera, which matters a lot to a lot of people. So anyway, those are kind of some of the things that are coming. So stay tuned. We can't do it all at once, but hopefully in the next 3 to 6 months, you won't lose, you know, I've gotten so many really wonderful requests about how can we help? What can we do? Sometimes that energy feels really alive and well that first 2 weeks that something is happening, but we're going to need more sustainable help if we're going to make some of these things really work in a more global way. We got messages from England and Japan saying 7 o'clock Tuesday night on Mountain Standard Time doesn't work. So there's also international need that we'd like to, support. Yeah, anything I'm missing, Lindsay?
No, I don't think so. I am so excited that we're doing that nonprofit thing though. Like that makes me so happy. That's something I've always wanted to do because when I was recently divorced and had just left the church and I couldn't afford therapy, I was working like 5 jobs. So I am so thrilled to be able to help people that truly need it because there is a need out there and
Yeah,
I'm excited.
for sure. Well, thank you for your time. Thanks everybody for listening. Again, you can always put comments here in the thread, but if you're worried about anonymity, you can just PM Symmetry Solutions page, and we will be able to get back to you probably within a few days. And we love ideas. We'd love any thoughts or yeah, anything that you can offer. So thank you, Lindsay. Have a great weekend.
You.
See you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.